Franchise is presented by FakeShep.net with support from MResell. If you're looking to buy an iPhone, iPad, MacBook, or any other Apple product, visit MResell today. They offer refurbished, top-of-the-line and next-to-new Apple products at a fraction of the regular price. And if you're looking to sell an Apple product, they'll buy them off you too. Visit mresell.com.au.
It's perfectly natural for a son to love his mother.
Alfred Hitchcock's seminal film Psycho needs no introduction, but for the sake of context, here's the rundown. Released in 1960, Psycho was a game changer. It redefined an entire genre and terrified global audiences with its new type of horror. It told the story of Norman Bates, a young man with mummy issues whose management of the Bates Motel became the stuff of legend both inside and outside of the cinematic universe. The film pushed envelopes of taste and challenged viewers by pushing taboos. Based on the novel by Robert Bloch, the inspiration for Psycho came from the infamous true story of Ed Gein, whose creative and murderous exploits would later provide the inspiration for films such as Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Silence of the Lambs, Deranged, and Child of God, amongst others. There is no shortage of information about Psycho, so we're going to go ahead with the assumption that you guys are across it. How's it going, everyone? You're listening to Franchised, a podcast presented by FakeShep.net. I'm your host, Glenn. Sitting across from me is Jarrett, and on this episode we're going to look at the sequels that followed Hitchcock's masterpiece, as well as that bizarre remake, the failed TV series, the successful TV series, and the tidbits in between. So now's your time to check into room number 1. The minibar is restocked, the shower is scrubbed, and we'll even throw in a king-size matricide. Let's get Psycho.
Well, I think I have a thrush.
What the fuck is a thrush?
Farewell, dear shithead.
No fucking shit, lady! Do I sound like I'm wearing a piece of shit?
Lick my plate, you dog dick!
Jarrett, how are you?
Good, man. Just been studying hard in readiness for this podcast.
That's a lot of study.
A lot of study.
I think I've bitten off way more than I can chew with this franchise. This is a heavy franchise that it's practically been covered ad nauseum in all kinds of ways over the years, particularly Hitchcock's originals. So how about we just ignore that one?
Done.
All right,
Done.
so we're going to talk. That's the gist of this podcast, anyways. We talk about the franchise that is spawned from an original film. So, just for those, I don't know who possibly out there doesn't know about Hitchcock's original.
Millennials.
Yeah, there you go. This one's for the millennials. And so Hitchcock's original masterpiece, it goes without saying, its story, its legacy, it's been covered to death, both in documentaries, in commentaries, in books, in even the Hollywood feature film Hitchcock.
I was actually going to say there's an entire documentary just about the bloody shower scene in the movie. 7852.
Boom. Like,
What?
So we don't really need to talk or rehash any of that shit. So we'll go straight into the sequels, starting with, of course, Psycho 2. I think it's probably important at this point to note that there will be spoilers in this episode.
Oh, without a doubt.
How can we talk about these without spoilers? But it's been long enough.
Yeah.
And at this point in time, you've been warned. So if you do have any interest in these and you haven't seen them, check them out. It's going to be a long episode, I reckon, so grab yourself a cuppa or something and let's go. Psycho 2. So Psycho 2 was made in 1982, released in 83.
Yeah.
I think that's how it works. It
Yeah.
was directed by Richard Franklin, who is obviously one of Australia's most premium, what would you call him, genre directors?
film royalty.
He's the Aussie Hitchcock.
Yeah.
Okay, and it was written by Tom Holland, who's the guy behind Child's Play.
Fright Night.
Fright Night, that's his magnum opus,
Class
I
of
think.
1984. You wrote that?
Langoliers, did he do that?
I think he directed that, actually. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anyway, Tom Holland, it stars Anthony Perkins, reprising his role as the infamous and legendary Norman Bates. It co-stars Meg Tilly, Vera Miles, Robert Loggier's in it, Dennis Franz. It's a really solid cast, and this is
Great
what I
cast.
would call one of the most unexpected sequels of all time. Also, one of the most underrated sequels of all time. I think this is an absolute belter.
It's a great film. Like, even as a standalone film, it is a terrific film. And I think, God, it took, 22 years for the film to be made or to be released for them to do a sequel, an ambitious, decision to do a sequel. And I believe it even started off as a TV movie, in its early genesis.
Right, I didn't know that.
Yeah. And they weren't even sure that Anthony Perkins would want to return to do this film.
what inspires them to say, hey, let's make Psycho 2? Like, firstly, it's the kind of film that you wouldn't think to touch.
Totally. It's like Citizen Kane of horror cinema.
And for them to actually take that outrageous concept and idea and then churn out something that is actually so true to the original and continues that storyline so prolifically, it just blows my mind. I want to give you a little bit of information here. Author Robert Bloch, who wrote the original, in novel form that is, he wrote a sequel novel himself in 1982, which was 23 years later after his original, and the studio decided to ignore it entirely. Now, it was a really cool concept, and I'm going to get stuck into a little bit of those later on when we talk about the books. But his story had Norman Bates escaping from the asylum dressed as a nun. Crossing the country on his way to Hollywood, he murders a hitchhiker with plans to use the hitchhiker's body to fake his own death. And the whole plan was to get to Hollywood and kill all the people involved in an adaptation of his story. So it's very Jay and Silent Bob.
Wow, yeah,
Strike
totally.
Back. Yeah, and how's that for an idea? Like,
Yeah.
he's just so enraged with the fact that people are going to retell his story that he's going to go and kill them all.
I love the fact that he's escaping the institution as a nun. It's all very
I
like
know.
Dark Knight meets, well, a bit of Psycho 3.
Well, that Psycho 3
Yeah.
has the nun factor in it. But I think it's really interesting that they decided to ignore it. I think it was because it was a satire of Hollywood.
It's pretty crazy. It sounds like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 type of sequel. It's
does.
very over the top and satirical, yeah.
Yeah, so, and FYI, that Bloch actually wrote 3 novels in the series, and then there was a 4th one written by another guy in 2016. So
Oh, wow.
I'll touch on them a bit later, just in a little bit of a throwaway. So anyway, Richard Franklin's film, Norman, is released 22 years later. He returns to his old stomping ground, running the Bates Motel and battling his own demons. He's a reformed man. He attempts to follow the straight and narrow, with new people entering his life as well as old foes. He suffers hallucinations and begins to question his own sanity. As I said, this is mind-blowing. It's clever. I think it's meticulously written. Wonderfully acted. The direction, it's just...
Yeah. No,
like,
no, I
when I'm thinking about it, awesome's the only word that keeps coming to my mind.
No, I thoroughly agree. It's got that kind of aspect that, when you have a film where, like a con, an ex-con gets out of jail and they're sort of around the bad element and they're encouraged to get back into crime, but they're trying to, keep their nose clean. And it feels very much like that. He's trying to play it straight, and there's all these influences that, want to drive him to do the wrong thing again. It's pretty tragic
And
because
is
it's
he
really
slipping?
sad.
Is he slipping? That's the whole
Yeah,
thing about this film.
totally.
It just leaves you hanging completely. And I think that this portrays him in such a sympathetic light. Like, he's such a likable character.
Yeah.
He's likable in the first one, but he turns out to be a fucking nut job, right? So,
Yeah.
So therefore, you don't really like him. But in this
Yeah.
one, like, maybe the system's worked. Maybe he's reformed.
Yeah,
And that's
yeah.
what I love about this one, is that you just don't know exactly what's happening.
Totally keeps you guessing right up until the end.
And I think, if Hitchcock had seen this one, I think he would have genuinely liked it.
Yeah, I agree.
Virginia Gregg returned as the voice of Mother, which is interesting, because she was one of 3 actors or actresses that played the voice of Mother in the original, and she returned for number 3 also. So we'll touch on that in a little bit. Interesting fact is Richard Franklin didn't like the poster art for this one.
The finished poster art that we've come to know and love.
Yes,
I love that poster art.
which is essentially the final act of the film, the final frame of the film, which has Norman walking out onto the step with a blue background. It's his silhouette.
Yeah, it's very cool.
It's very much sort of inspired by The Exorcist, with Max von Sydow looking up.
And it's like almost a callback to a scene earlier in the film, because I'm pretty sure he's up there and he's waving, hey, and talking to someone and giving
right
them a
down.
wave. Yeah, absolutely. It's actually on the DVD menu, isn't it? Is that 2 or
number
3?
3. That's number 3.
It's 3,
Yeah. But what's interesting about the poster art is that Franklin didn't like it. It was originally the studio turned that image into Christmas cards for all the production staff and things like that.
Wow.
And they really liked it, so they used it for the poster. I think it's a great poster.
Great art, and having the Psycho logo in that red, that cracked red's beautiful. It suits that color palette of the poster beautifully.
Should also mention that this really drums up the slasher factor.
Yeah.
Like, it's a violent film.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a violent film. The scene of him clutching the knife.
Oh God, yeah. Oh God.
Oh, it's so hard to watch. Is that number 2 or number 3? I think it's number 2.
No. Ooh, now you got me wondering. I feel like it's number 3 where he cuts. No. It might be number 2. God, now I'm really confused. But in terms of gore, there's plenty of great gore sequences in this film.
Knife down the throat.
Yeah, and it's really explicit, which really surprises me that they got away with it. In fact, I'm not sure, but was this film... I got a feeling this film might have only had an M classification, whereas the third third one's got an R.
The third definitely has an R.
Yeah,
yes,
I
this
think it was
has
the
an
first
M.
in the franchise to get an R, but this one is well worthy of an R.
Well, I think that's because in the third one, there's no mistaking the psycho factor in the third one.
Yeah, and there's a lot of sexuality in the third one too.
Which
Reasonably
we'll
explicit.
Get to that in a second.
Yeah,
I'm really interested to hear what Sean has to say, but he's not with us. So, what do you reckon we just
Give him a call.
give him a call?
Give him a call,
Alright.
dude.
Do you have his number?
No, but you can call anyone on Facebook these days.
Okay, give me a sec. All right. It's ringing. Hey, dude.
Yo, how's it going? What's happening?
Yeah, so we're up to Psycho 2. Want to know what you think of it? You got 30 seconds. Go.
Okay, Psycho 2. Much better than I thought it was going to be, actually. I've never given the Psycho sequels much time, and I'm kind of regretful that I haven't, because Psycho 2 actually stands up pretty good. Like, it's nowhere near the same caliber as the first one, but it's much more confident than I thought. It's much less exploitative than I thought it was. And Anthony Perkins is fantastic. And that, when he gets the old lady in the back of the head with the fry pan, I mean, Jesus Christ, that's mental. Yeah, anyway, much better than I thought it was going to be. A long answer to a short question.
Dude, we've got to go.
Okay, I mean, you call me.
Does that guy realise we've got a podcast going on or what?
Oh, man. Does he like to talk or what? Okay, so Psycho 3 is 1986. Now, this one was directed by Anthony Perkins himself. That was his terms of agreement to return to the franchise, was so long as he could direct it. It was written by Charles Edward Pogue, who is the guy that actually wrote The Fly, DOA, and Dragonheart, of all things.
DOA is in the one with Dennis Quaid, that version of DOA? Yeah, right.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a remake of the original DOA.
Yeah. And it was it starred Jeff Fahey in it, Donovan Scott, Kat Shea, Diana Scarwid. I think that's how you pronounce her name.
Right.
She's the main actress in this one.
The Nun.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this one's set only a matter of weeks after the conclusion of part 2. And this third installment makes no bones about it. Norman Bates is a fully fledged psycho. He falls in love with a suicidal nun who's on the run. She stays at his motel. Then a drifter passes through and is given the job as the motel's assistant manager. Of course, a tenacious journalist, swings by and begins to suspect Norman is up to his old tricks. This is a balls-to-the-wall horror film. This, to me, this is also a really decent sequel, but this one is, I guess, almost a surrealist film.
Yeah, it's a bit rock and roll. There's a lot of visual, a lot of colour in this. You can tell it. Not that it seemed like an 80s film, but it has a very MTV feel about it. It's quite edgy. It was that cusp of, I think, that mid-80s where they were sort of really, pushing the envelope a bit more.
Definitely envelope pushing going on in this one. I find it very interesting that Norman Bates, Anthony Perkins, he owns this character by this stage, and he's directing this film. And the fact that he would push it in such a blatantly gratuitous horror direction is fascinating.
And very sexualized as well. I mean, there's always been a huge element of sexuality in these films and perversion, but this one in particular, there's a girl that dies on the toilet and a little bit of toilet paper lands on her head afterward after she's just been doing a wee. There's,
surely that's a nod.
The girl that's with Jeff Fahey, she, is kicked out of the hotel room naked, and she ends up, still naked almost in a phone booth, getting killed by Norman.
And what a scene!
It's a great scene. They're great set pieces. Like, the kills are really good. I think too that we'd had that slasher sort of craze in a big way. There'd been the Friday the 13th films. That this came at that point where it's like, okay, these are the things that kind of matter. Let's amp up those kills. Let's make them count.
And the production design, the colours, and it's just so
absolutely
bright. It pops off the screen.
Yeah, almost neon at times.
Totally, particularly Jeff Fahey's room. Like, he's
what the fuck is going on? I feel like we walked into like some sort of drug den.
So this guy has only been there for a matter of days, and already he's got it set up. Like, he's got photos all over his wall.
Nudie photos all over the wall. And here's the other thing, right? Norman, did he not learn his lesson from, Dennis Franz, having worked in the office of the Bates Motel in the second film? He kicks him out for turning the place into, a sex sort of pit squalor.
Yep.
He hires Jeff Fahey, who's clearly a bad decision from the get-go. It's Job from The Lawnmower Man. Come on. hires this guy, and then within minutes he's turning this place into a party central.
But at this point, Norman Bates is a full-fledged psycho. I think
it's true. He's just looking for
He's
kills.
not trying to, to walk the straight and narrow anymore.
Well, I don't know, that love interest almost kind of throws things up. He's sort of like, I think he kind of doesn't want to do it, but he's got to do it.
He does. This was also, interestingly, the only R-rated sequel in the franchise.
Yeah.
And that was what I think attracted me to it as a kid.
Of course, yeah.
And the poster art for this one, I think, upon reflection, I loved it as a kid. I think the poster art was great. But
I loved it as a kid,
If I look at it now, it's just so badly done.
I know, it's a bit cheesy,
Like the
but I do like
concept and
it.
the image is cool. I think it's just really poorly. They didn't have Photoshop then, so the cut and paste job was really, really
the
tacky.
perspective doesn't look kind of right. Although I do remember when it came out on video, the local video store had painted, how video stores used to paint kind of murals out the front for upcoming releases? They did one for this, and it was bang on exactly like the video cover, and I wish I took a photo of it, because it's like coming to the House of Norman to worship, like coming to Bates Motel. You'd have this big Anthony Perkins at the video store.
That's a video store, like, fully putting an R-rated film
I
on
know,
the window.
front and center.
Oh my God. I freaking love it.
Yeah,
Like,
it's a great film. Like, I mean, the second one is actually a great film. This is a popcorn kind of candy movie, but it does what it does, and it does it well. And it's an interesting exercise in the franchise because it's different from the first two installments.
Yeah.
Like, we're going and breaking sort of new ground, and we're not detracting from the fact that the first two are, in their own ways, masterpieces.
Number 2 tried to respect Hitchcock.
Yeah.
This one is like, nah, we're done with that.
It's balls out.
Yeah, that's it. This is now Anthony Perkins' game,
Totally.
and that's what I love about it. And I think, personally, this is my favourite portrayal of Norman Bates in the whole series. Like, I mean, he's great in the original, obviously.
Yeah.
But I think the way Perkins does the character in this one is just absolutely ripper.
Yeah.
And that end scene, which is comparable to the original end scene, it's
terrific.
so nicely
This is
done.
with him in the
back
car,
seat,
in the back seat, and he's got Mother's hand. He's
Yeah.
so stoked because he's finally got rid of Mother, but he's
stroking
kept a
her
little
hand.
piece of her. Yeah, it's terrific. What
and
an
then
ending.
he just looks up at the camera.
Yeah.
And then we get that fade to black, and it's a sort of pinpoint
Yeah,
right
it's
down.
great because they've keyed out the green screen background or blue screen, whatever they used in the day, and it just fades to black, and then you've just kind of got him illuminated and then the fade to black completely.
Oh,
yeah,
it's
it's
fantastic.
a great closer, actually.
Well, we forgot to ask Sean what he thought about this one too.
Right, well, I'm sure he's going to have loved it.
You reckon?
No.
No?
No,
Okay.
I've got almost... I don't know. I've almost got a feeling that he's going to say that this is the one that jumped the shark, but he may have said that about Psycho too, so who knows? Give him a call, Glenn. Go on.
Weren't you listening to him before?
What's that? Oh, no. I actually shut off.
Okay.
I was
Cool.
thinking
All
about
right.
what I'm going to eat later.
I'm calling him now. Hey,
How's it going?
dude, we forgot to ask you about Psycho 3. So you've got... I'll give you 30 seconds for this one too. Cool?
Yeah, right. Psycho 3. I don't remember ever having watched it. Like, I remember the front cover when I was in the video store. That shot of Anthony Perkins with the keys, but I don't remember ever having seen it. But I feel like this is the one where Anthony Perkins, obviously, as you guys have probably already mentioned, he directed. But it kind of deviates. I feel like it's kind of pandering to the audience of the 80s. It's very kind of Texas Chainsaw Massacre feeling. And I know Anthony Perkins is quoted as saying that it was a Blood Simple, and there is a little bit of Blood Simple influence in there. But I kind of feel like he's trying to compete with the sort of gnarly, gory, exploitation-y, slasher-y stuff that's going on. But contradictorily, I feel like there's a little bit more control than those films have. Like for a first-time director, I was surprised at how confident he was. I don't think it works all the time by any stretch. I think it maintains its atmosphere, and the score, how they kind of tweak the score into that synth kind of sound. I quite like that. Jeff Fahey, always a pleasure. But yeah, I mean, I feel like it's the laws of diminishing returns. Like, it just, each subsequent sequel just gets a little weaker than the one before. But
Cheers, dude. See ya.
yeah. All right, cool.
Well, that was interesting. What did you make of it?
Pancakes. Thinking about him. I'm thinking about him.
Oh, delicious.
Yeah, what are you talking about? What are you thinking about? Pancakes?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Pikelets.
Pikelets, they're tiny, but they're cute. Not very filling.
This is the point where, in the timeline of Psycho, we would normally talk about the Bates Motel because that's where that telly movie comes into play. But we'll save that for now. We'll skip straight to Psycho 4 so we can get the actual movies out of the way.
Makes sense.
The Norman Bates story out of the way, and then we'll move on to it. So Psycho 4, released in 1990. This one was directed by our old mate Mick Garris, written by Joseph Stefano, who was the screenwriter of the original. Anthony Perkins, of course, returns. We've got Henry Thomas playing a very young Norman Bates, Olivia Hussey as his mother, CC Pounder, and John Landis. What the fuck? I'm dead keen to hear what you think about this one.
Olivia Hussey, is she the one from Hot Shots? Is that the actress, the one that plays the mother in Psycho 4? Is it the girl from Hot Shots? The love interest? Charlie Sheen?
Not even close.
Really?
She was in Mick Garris's The Stand.
Right, okay, yeah.
No, she wasn't.
Yeah. No?
I'm thinking of another actress.
The girl
but
from
Olivia...
Just Shoot Me. That's the one that's in The Stand. I remember her.
Olivia Hussey was in Romeo and Juliet, the original...
the Zapparelli? Yeah, something like that? Yeah. Yeah, I was convinced. I was watching it. I was like, I should jump on IMDb and check if this is the girl from Hot Shots.
No.
But I didn't.
No, I can tell.
But it's been a while since I've seen Hot Shots.
Okay, so look, I'm just going to get things back on track here. The film ignores the narrative of part 2 and 3 by serving as a direct sequel to Hitchcock's original film. Having said that, it doesn't really go out of its way to distance itself. It just sort of ignores them, just with a couple of little references. And I think that's because Stefano didn't like the fact that they rewrote the mother history in the second two sequels.
Right.
Which is fair enough, but I kind of like what they did. I don't think you can go with an actual number 4, with the number 4 in the title, and just discredit what came before. I don't like it when
it's almost like it
that.
should have been called Psycho the Beginning, because then they could kind of get away with the fact that it's a 4th film, but also it's not really. It's like a sequel to the first film.
That's it.
Well, a prequel.
So yeah, it serves as a sequel and a prequel. There's a heavier emphasis on the origin story here, which I think is rightfully so, which that would of course inspire the 2013 A&E series with Freddie Highmore, and we'll talk about that in a little bit too.
Okay.
So the concept of this one is that Norman Bates is at home and he's listening to a radio talk show. It's a late night show discussing matricide. He calls in and he stands in his kitchen as he prepares food with a large chopping knife, and he discusses his psychological state, revealing that he's married and he's cured. And as he talks about his relationship to his mother, we have flashbacks to his teenage years, where Henry Thomas, assumes the character, and explores the whole unnatural bond between him and his mother. I find this a really intriguing installment. I don't necessarily like it though.
What's weird is I like it. I do like it. I won't say I love it, but I'm always drawn to watch it. And it delivers, for a made-for-TV movie too, which we haven't mentioned. This was obviously made for television.
Made for Showtime.
Yeah, the production values is significantly lower than the other films. But having watched the Blu-ray recently and actually watching it in a widescreen aspect ratio, it looks quite cinematic, surprisingly. But yeah, I like it. I love Henry Thomas, so it's always good to see him in his adolescence play this sort of character. It is a little hammy and over the top at times. But the Norman Bates stuff I think is great. I think Anthony Perkins is fantastic.
The thing is, I don't like the tone and the style of the prequel stuff.
Right.
And I think that kind of deserved its own film without throwing back and forth between time.
Yeah, of course.
Because Norman Bates in his kitchen, and this, we might add, was made not long before he passed away.
Yeah. Well, he actually found out during the production of this film that he was HIV positive.
Yes, that's right. So I love that stuff, and I think the production value of that kitchen stuff with the lighting, it's really sinister and dark, and you don't know if he is still psycho or not.
Yeah.
Once again, I like all that, but there's something about those flashbacks. I think they're a bit too light and fluffy for me.
Okay.
Bit too shiny.
TV.
Yeah, way too
glossy?
television. You can tell it's a TV movie from that.
Yeah.
It's a very polished production,
right?
But it's nice to see the house painted originally, all that kind of stuff. Mick Garris has stated many times that Anthony Perkins was impossible to work with.
Super difficult to work with is what I've heard.
Which is interesting because other people previously had said he's not, that he's a gentleman. I think it was more the case he didn't have much control.
He wanted, because apparently he did want to direct this film.
Really?
He wanted to direct it, and so I think he felt like he'd been sort of pushed aside after 3, and 3 did garner some pretty average reviews as well.
Yeah.
So I guess it was a surprise that 4 years later that they'd refresh the franchise for TV, call him back, and then get someone else to direct it. But I heard that he was very happy with the end product.
Yes,
though.
well,
Yeah.
in that documentary, the Psycho Legacy,
great doco.
they talk about how he went up to, I think it was either Mick Garris or one of the producers, and just said, well, this is the best sequel.
Yeah, insane.
Which,
yeah.
I don't know how... How do you come to that conclusion?
Sort of hard to say. Maybe he felt like, I don't know, that it gave credence to where his character came from. I don't know. Maybe he was just in a bad state of mind with everything he was going through, so he was a little bit more open to it. Maybe he felt guilty about treating Mick so badly on production of the film.
Maybe
Mick would have been pretty young when he made this film too.
He might have been an intentional arsehole too.
Yeah.
We've got a young hotshot on this.
Yeah, he's just off the back of Critters 2. I'm going to show this guy.
That's it. And I'm a big star.
Exactly.
That's the thing,
Yeah.
An interesting thing, they shot this one in Florida, at Florida Universal Studios.
Ah, yes.
So it's a different look entirely just because of its location, I think. And there's a bit of pressure on them when they were making this one because it was made during the opening of the Universal theme park in Florida.
Right.
And so they had the tourists coming and going in their tour buses while they were filming this one, which would be really distracting when you're trying to film.
Totally.
There's a whole different thing going on about this film in all kinds of regards, and I think the change of location is probably one of them. What anything you want to add to this one? John Landis is a weird one. I think it's just the mate thing. He's a mate of Mick's.
Of course, yeah. He's popped up again in Sleepwalkers.
Yes.
So, not much more to add, to be honest. Like, I think it's a fun sequel. I think I'm a little bit easier going on it because it was direct-to-video, direct-to-video in Australia, because obviously didn't broadcast here, it went to video. I had no real expectation for it. In fact, I thought the artwork looked terrible on video, but I rented it because it was Psycho.
It's got a few
Watched it and
artworks.
liked it. Yeah, the Aussie one was particularly crappy. I don't think that one I saw
the Aussie
anywhere
one,
else.
the one with like the square reflective kind of
yeah,
images?
Yeah,
Where it's like
it was like one center image
Yeah.
and then some sort of mirrored side image, and it just
that was crap.
It's pretty crap, to be honest. And so I think I went into it with very low expectations. I mean, I was 10 or 11 when it came out.
Yeah.
But I did love the franchise, and I kind of came away going, it's fun for a TV movie. Had it been a theatrical sort of thing, maybe not.
But that's my problem too. Is like this is obviously a fantastic franchise. To take it to television land, I think, is what sort of puts me off with this one.
Right.
It's like I love the theatrical. I wish this had been theatrical. I think we would have got a much more substantial kind of film.
True.
Interesting that they brought Stefano back.
Yeah.
Because I don't think this really cuts the mustard as far as him writing it as a direct follow-up to the original. That's a shame. But anyway, it is what it is. Is there anything you want to add to it?
No, that's all.
All right.
That's everything.
Should we try? What's his name again?
Oh, God, I can't wait to hear what he thinks of Psycho 4.
one
Well,
last time.
really, I just can't wait to think about what I'm going to eat next. But anyway,
Have you got the menu log thing there?
I've actually got it loaded on my phone right
you
now.
start.
Please don't make me call Sean, because I just want to order food.
Okay. you look up whatever's local Chinese.
There's a local diner. I think
Cool.
there's a guy that works as a cook there named Norman.
All right, I'll call him now.
Yo, yeah.
Sorry, mate. Just one more.
Yep.
And keep it short.
Yep, sure. Psycho 4. It's good. It's not great. It's good. I don't think it's any better or worse than Psycho 3. It's a lot milder, obviously, and that's probably because of the made-for-TV scenario. But I think the most interesting thing about it is Mick Garris. He's directing with a lot of, I know I keep saying this for every one of them, there's a confidence there, but he's directing with a bit more pizzazz and style, particularly in his transitions. That was, really, I thought they were really interesting, helped to open up this film that was, for the most part, a chamber piece. Like whenever Anthony Perkins is on screen, it's actually only in about 2 different rooms, and then there's the radio jockeys, the disc jockeys that are talking in their own room. But it feels like a bigger film in that regard. Olivia Hussey is I think that's how you pronounce it, Hussey. It seems a bit wrong, but she does well. She kind of lacks nuance, but she's fine. And obviously, little Elliot's a little bit more grown up, and creepy dynamics between those two, man. That was as unsettling as anything that happened in any of the films before. It's just really. Yeah, the less said, the better. Yeah, look, I mean, it's fine. I'm glad I finally got around to seeing it, but it's it's good. So yeah, there you go. There's my Psycho. Happy? Yeah, you happy? No more phone calls. That'd be good. All right, guys. I'll see you soon. Okay, bye.
Well, there you go. There you go.
Yeah.
You're going to cut him down to like 20 seconds next time, I think. Get him
I think
maybe
we're
10
done.
seconds.
I think we're done with Sean.
Yeah, okay. I really want to hear what he thinks of the Psycho remake.
He's going to hate us.
Yeah, well, yeah, I've got to hear it.
Okay.
Got to hear it.
All right. Okay, so anyway, we are up to the Psycho Legacy. Let's touch upon that before we talk about Bates Motel. This is a fantastic documentary. It
Terrific
covers
doco.
parts 1 through to 4. It features talking heads from Mick Garris, Henry Thomas, Janet Leigh, Tom Holland, Michael Gingold. Is that how you pronounce his name?
Yep.
Donovan Scott, Jeff Fay, Robert Loggia, a whole lot of others. And I watched this again the other night just to sort of, the recap on everything, and it goes right into detail. You've got archival footage of Anthony Perkins talking about
it's
Norman
great,
Bates and how he came to accept the fact that he's an icon from horror as opposed to a thespian and all that. And yeah, just a really good doco. I think any respectable movie lover, let alone horror, should really get stuck into.
Yeah, it's a fantastic doc. I remember I bought it as a standalone release a few years ago, 2-disc set, and then it's in the box set. So,
I remember you gave me the standalone one
Oh, did
when
I?
you bought the box
well,
set.
there you go. Well, that's where it ended up. I thought I might have sold it on eBay.
And now I have that box set.
Well, there you go. You can maybe pass it on to Sean. But then, why? He's never going to watch it now. He's watched all the films. I was going to mention 90 minutes. It is a super tight doco that touches on all 4 films in a great way. Because you've got, the Nightmare on Elm Street, Never Sleep Again doco. His name is Jason. I mean, granted, they've got more installments, but they are a little bit padded out and way too long.
4 hours for Never Sleep Again?
Oh, it's ridiculous. Yeah, I've got through Never Sleep Again. I haven't made it through His Name is Jason. Oh, no, I did. His Name is Jason. There's another one called Camp Crystal Lake Memoirs.
Yep.
That one goes for about 4 hours or so. I haven't made it through that one yet.
Bloody hell.
So, yeah, it's a tight little piece. And it's actually directed by one of the guys, Rob, from the Shockwaves podcast. One of my favourite podcasts. It's the only thing he's actually ever directed. I think he's produced a bunch of special features for Scream Factory releases, but he directed the doco, so it was a labour of love, and he loves the franchise. But yeah, terrific doco. Terrific doco.
If you're looking for a new Mac product, Emery Cell is the place for you. Don't throw your money away on stupidly expensive Apple gear when Emery Cell provides top-of-the-line, totally refurbished products across the Apple range. Whether you need a new iPhone, iMac, Mac Pro, iPad or other Apple products, visit Emery Cell. And if you're looking to sell your Apple gear for whatever reason, Emery Cell can offer a generous price with full data erasure, fast payment, and free shipping. Visit Emery Cell's website to see for yourself. FakeShep.net uses their products, and they wouldn't steer you wrong. Visit emerycell.com.au.
Tune in to the next episode of Rewind and Digress, where we track back to 2014 to talk about Jared Johnson's wildly entertaining comedy horror, Housebound.
You've watched this film more times than I have. I have watched it with the audio commentary, though, and I learnt a lot from the audio commentary, some of which I did mention early. My favourite thing I learnt from the audio commentary is that in New Zealand, they call speed bumps judder bars. A judder bar. And as soon as it came on, I said to Danny, I was like, judder bar. It's just in the bedroom. It's like, what? And I'm like, judder bar. I'm just like, what? What's a judder bar? I'm like, it's a speed bump.
Judder Bar, isn't it like the remake of Babadook?
The Judder Bar. It's a New Zealand remake.
And don't forget to catch up on previous episodes where we discuss Squirm, Pet Sematary, Basketball, and The Loved Ones.
It's 27 years later.
I, Norman Bates, being of sound mind.
Knowing the history of that place, I'd be out of there at the first full moon.
Bates Motel has come back to life.
Isn't that crazy?
And history will repeat itself.
Like most people, they don't go around seeing stuff that's not there.
One more time.
What are you doing here?
One last time. Bates Motel.
All right, where are we? That brings us to 1987. We'll go back a little bit. The Bates Motel. This is a tally movie that was made in between Psycho 3 and 4. Now, it served as a pilot episode for a failed TV series. It ignores the sequels entirely. It follows a new character called Alex West, who's played by Bud Cort, a former inmate and friend of Norman Bates, who inherits the Bates Motel following Norman's death. Now, this is a weird concoction, isn't it?
was weird too, because it's 87, so it's only a year after Psycho 3. So what are they thinking? That the TV universe could exist outside of the movie universe and they would never do another Psycho film? They deemed that in a year that there'll be no more Psychos,
I think
so
it was
we'll kill off Norman.
the point that at this point in time we had all of these horror movies being turned into
True.
anthology shows on TV.
True.
Like you had Freddy's Nightmares, Friday the 13th, all these things. And they thought, well, what's a horror brand that we can tack that
True.
concept onto?
True.
Which this movie shows that, because the first half of it is the story of Alex.
Yeah.
And the second half just switches completely and turns into like a ghost story that has no relation to Psycho, which clearly it was going to be different stories that take place at the Bates Motel, whether or not related to Norman.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's just a bizarre thing.
It's got
to watch.
fail written all over it. I mean, like, the tone, it's just really bad humour.
Yeah.
Like,
it's
really
kind
bad
of like,
gags.
I'm going to focus more on the second story here, because the first
The
one...
ghost of Norman's mother, possibly, in the house?
Well, this is it. It turns into Scooby-Doo.
Yeah.
They pull the mask off Mother and, it's Mr. Arbuckle.
Yeah,
It's the
yeah,
amusement
yeah.
park, that kind of thing. And I kind of suspect they were going to go for that in every episode. If they had it forged forward, it was going to be this whole mystery of who it was and a whodunit kind of thing.
right.
I don't know. That's where my mind is going.
It's crazy that it even got released, in all honesty, because, like, typically these pilots get made, and if they don't get picked up, that's sort of the end of it. It's just generally how it happens. Some of them leak on the internet. Some get passed around on bootleg tapes back in the day. It's surprising that they'd even bother putting this out.
They probably just thought, well, there's money to be made on home entertainment. I mean, the cover was actually good.
Cover was very good. With him with the guest book, holding it open.
It's
sort
an
of thing.
odd
Yeah.
image because he kind of doesn't look quite right. The
yeah.
angle he's on. But as a kid, it always struck me.
It's a very cool image.
And I
yeah.
remember, for years I tried to track it down as a bootleg, just because I wanted to have it as part of my Psycho
I remember
collection.
when I spoke to you and you told me you had it, and at that point it wasn't readily sort of available. Like, you'd got it as an MOD Blu-ray, a DVD from somewhere, and I'm like, you've got it? Oh man, I really want to see that again. You may have even lent it to me, dude, and I rewatched it.
I reckon I did. I did. And I mean, now it's part of the Blu-ray box set.
It's crazy, yeah. It's on there. It's in there.
Interesting thing, did you notice a particular actor in this film? I'm not going to say Jason Bateman because he is in it, but
Yep.
George Buck Flowers. Now, do you know who this guy is?
No.
He is the bum in every Hollywood movie of that time. He was the bum from Back to the Future that's on the bench. And
Oh, yeah.
he was the alcoholic bum in Maniac Cop, Night Stalker, Dead Men Don't Die, Dark Breed, Wishmaster, Mum Can I Keep Her? He always played the bum, the typecast bum.
Yeah.
Which
Maybe he was legitimately a bum in a studio lot, and they're like, get him in again.
Yeah. And did you notice who his best buddy was in the film? The
No.
other homeless
well,
guy?
admittedly, I only got 15 minutes through it recently. I just couldn't watch any more of it. It was pretty bad. I would watch it, but I'm psychoed out.
Well, they were in the first 10 minutes.
Right.
Of the film,
Oh, okay.
so no,
right.
you're-
During the car, like, was there a sequence in a car lot at the start?
Something like that.
I feel
Anyway,
like there was.
The other bum was played by Carmen Philippi, who is also in every freaking Hollywood film at the time. He was Old Man Withers in Wayne's World. He was in The Sure Thing, Meet Wally Sparks, Pee-wee's Big Adventure, The Wedding Singer.
Wow.
He's the guy that says, I used to be a lot stronger.
Yeah, right. Wow. Any relation to Ryan? You don't know. Well, I don't know, because sometimes you come up with some of the randomest things. You were telling me in one episode about Blake Lively being related to Jason Lively, and that blew my mind.
Yeah.
So, you never know.
No, different
Right,
spelling.
okay.
Different spelling. Sounds like a country song to me. And he's the bum that sings the Jimmy Crack Corn song in Pee-wee's Big Adventure on the train.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's more interesting than the Bates Motel itself. In flashback photos of Norman Bates with Alec, we see Norman Bates as a hippie in a freedom rally. Did you see that?
Yeah, I do have memories of that. It kind of pisses on the whole franchise in a bit. Like, it's such an insult.
It entirely pisses on
it's
it.
a real insult. And only, again, a year after Psycho 3. How insulting. No wonder Anthony Perkins, if he saw this, no wonder he was angry by the time he got called back to do the beginning and having to work with a new director. He's like, what the fuck are they doing with this franchise?
No, oh my God. And I don't know where to be. Like, I could actually rag on this one for a long time.
This sounds like it could be one of your WTF.
Yeah,
what is it?
actually, that's a good idea.
Yeah,
it's a good idea.
That would be a perfect candidate.
That's coming soon.
Excellent. I look forward to it.
Interestingly, the guy that played Norman Bates in this briefly is the stunt guy for Anthony Perkins in the previous films.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, so he has a connection to the original film.
Okay, yeah, wow.
Which is interesting. And the most hilarious thing, and you probably don't remember this because you didn't get that far, is the way the movie closes.
No,
You've
I
got
can't
this
remember.
scene where Alex walks out into the car park and addresses the audience directly to camera, and he breaks the fourth wall completely. And as he's saying his line, the camera sort of cranes up, and he's like, "Well, I'll see you later." But I'm going to play that right now. Have a listen to this.
Nobody ever said life was easy. Then nothing really worth it ever is. But I think with a little luck, we're gonna do okay here. I think Norman would have liked that. Oh, by the way, if you ever need a room, come on by. Can't say for sure what you'll find, but that is what makes the world go round.
What the fuck is that?
Where does that line, like everything else works, and then just that throwaway line at the end is like, what the fuck?
That is what makes the world go round.
But it almost feels like with that little bit of dialogue, there could have been an interesting series, because there could have been different stories in every room in every episode, like that Duplass Brothers HBO series that was on like last year. It could have been good, except it was shit. There's that.
Oh,
shit.
dude, I think we've invested way too much energy in the Bates Motel there. So, shall we move on to...
Are we going to touch on... Are we talking about the remake now?
Yeah.
Or, yeah, right, okay.
Psycho.
Wow. Wow, Glenn. Have not seen it since it played theatrically in 1998 until the other night when I revisited it. I've always been curious to revisit it because I've heard Ty West speak quite highly of this movie.
I was going to bring Ty West into this because
it's a fucking disaster, this movie. I know. And I rewatched him talk about it to see... Why?
Is he taking the piss?
I genuinely think that he is so deluded that he thinks that it is actually a good film.
Well, whilst we're on that, the most outrageous thing of all is Quentin Tarantino put himself on the record stating that he liked the remake more than the original.
Are you? I've never heard. That's disgusting.
Look it up.
That is disgusting.
And he put a homage to the original in Pulp Fiction, for fuck's sake.
Yeah.
Anyway, that is what really blew my mind. Continue.
Look, this is the remake that never should have happened. I mean, we've talked about Nightmare on Elm Street before, how much you have disdain for it, but this has to be the worst remake of all time, surely.
It's right up there. Now, we should mention that it was directed by Gus Van Sant,
who just came off the back of Good Will Hunting.
Yes,
Had just won an Oscar.
He had literally made one of the great films of modern times.
And it wasn't even like the studio hunted him. Well, the studio did hunt him and said, what is your dream project to make happen? He'd been trying to get up the Psycho remake for some time. And this is what he wanted to do.
Oh my God.
He's got no one to blame but himself.
Okay, well, the big question then is this a clusterfuck of a movie or a cheeky experiment?
Look,
it's like they've fallen back on the experiment factor when it got so maligned.
I agree. Like, because if the fact that it just didn't work as a movie makes me feel like the excuse is, it was an experiment.
Because it is shot
and we got
by
away
shot.
with the experiment. We made it. Yeah, it's shot for shot. Well, almost shot for shot. There's all those weird inserts like the cow and Madonna from the Erotica video or something. Erotic. There's so many, and then they expand on things that aren't in the frame in the original, like Anne H's vagina, the back of that, her breasts.
Wanking.
The wanking, which it doesn't pan down, but you've got the sound effects of it. So, it might be shot for shot in that regard. But, yeah, I mean, and that's disgusting because Vince Vaughn's portrayal of Norman Bates is shit. From the get-go, you think he's a creep. There's no element of, maybe he's a nice guy, or, he's having a bit of trouble with his mother. Jeez, his mother's a bitch. Oh, my God, his mother's a fucking killer. He's just a creep from the beginning. It looks like he hasn't slept. He's been on a meth binge.
I think it is a terrible performance.
Yeah, it's a bad casting.
Bad direction.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about the casting because holy fuck. I mean, you've got Vince Vaughn as Norman.
It's
You've
a great
got
cast.
Anne Heche as Marion Crane, Viggo Mortensen as Sam Loomis, Julianne Moore, William H. Macy, Robert Forster, Philip Baker Hall, Rance Howard, Rita Wilson, James Remar. This is an amazing...
Star-studded.
Amazing ensemble.
Yeah, and they're all guilty. They should never have agreed to do this fucking movie. But, I honestly feel like everyone in this movie feels like they're acting in their own movie. Like, they're all kind of doing their own things. I've heard, Anne Heche say how she studied Janet Leigh in the original Psycho, and all the movements had to be the same, but she decided she was going to try and play it slightly different, but follow all the same mannerisms and that. And I mean, she does a good enough job. She's a very different character from the one Janet Leigh portrayed. Vince Vaughn's terrible. The only good performance... I mean, there's two good performances in it for me. Viggo Mortensen and Julianne Moore, I think, is good. Her wardrobe's fucking atrocious.
Yeah.
But William H. Macy's terrible in it. He's like it's so cartoony and caricature. It's awful.
The thing that, with the performances, and this is from Gus Van Sant himself talking on the commentary, is that the actors all chose to do it in different ways. Some wanted to be completely true to the original and act it just like the original, while others wanted to interpret it differently. In a contemporary light. So
Did Vince Vaughn experiment and try and do it differently, or was he trying to play Anthony Perkins, Norman Bates?
Oh, look, I don't know. I mean, there's no forgiving this one.
Dude, it got to 58 minutes in and I pressed info on the Blu-ray because I'm like, I can't watch anymore. And I'd been like quite abusive. I was saying to Danny, this is fucking terrible. I knew it was bad. I just didn't remember it was this bad. And I checked the info and it said 58 minutes. And I had like maybe 38 or 40 minutes to go. And I was like, oh, no, just do it. I'll finish it. And then at the end, I was like, it was the closing scene, and I was like, I'm just pacing. When will it end? When will it end? And I was so angry after it, Glenn. Man. I was so angry. So angry. I jumped on the internet and just... Does everyone hate this movie? Who likes this movie?
You know what? Like,
listening to Gus Van Sant try and defend the movie, I was just like, I was raging, dude.
We knew this was a bad movie before it even got released. I mean,
yeah.
You know, I hate it when people predict things to be bad, and I hate it when they anticipate badness. You know, like, oh, it's gonna suck. It's gonna suck. It's like, well, fucking watch it and find out. But this is the one that you're like, well, no, you don't remake something like this.
You don't remake a masterpiece.
No, you don't. No. And they did, and it's exactly what we thought it would be. A fucking clusterfuck.
The only good thing to come out of this film is the poster art.
I was going to say the poster's cool.
That's the only good thing. And the tagline's not so bad. It was like, what was it? Check in, rest, take a shower or something like that. It was like, it's not a bad tagline. It's okay. But the poster art's really good. The trailer, dude, is one of the all-time worst 90s trailers ever, with a whole bunch of shit that's not in the actual finished film.
What?
And has all this video effect on it. There's heaps of stuff in the trailer that's not actually in the film in terms of like cutaway stuff. It feels like, I don't know you're a fan of 9 Inch Nails, but it feels like a 9 Inch Nails music video.
You're right.
Which doesn't feel like it should ever be in the world of Psycho.
No.
I trust Trent Reznor as a score, like a Psycho
he
sequel for sure. You know, that'd be good. But man, yeah, there's not enough words for how much I hate this film. In fact, I jumped on Letterboxd. I didn't want to put it out there on Facebook. I didn't want to see any before we did this podcast what my feelings were on the remake. I didn't want to spoil it for anyone. But I did jump on Letterboxd, and you can't give a film 0 stars out of 5. You just don't fill the stars in. But sometimes I do that with films that I've seen and I'm working closely with, and I don't want to have an opinion on there. Yeah. I don't want to put it out. So I wrote in the text field where you write a review, which I never write reviews. Sometimes I write unrated version or director's cut or whatever version I watched. I wrote no, in capitals, fucking stars. Because I wanted people to know, he watched Psycho, but he didn't rate it. Why? Maybe he forgot. No fucking stars.
You know what? You've got the DVD there. I can see. Hand it to me. This is what we do with it.
Dude, yeah.
Okay, thank you. And and you wanted to hear what old man wanted to say about this one, yeah?
Yeah, I absolutely really want to hear what Sean's got to say about this one.
Okay, I'm going to call him again. Okay, here we go.
Jesus H. Christ, guy. Like, I got things to do. You guys are calling me. Like, what is it?
Sorry to bother you again. We want to know what you think of the remake. And you have... How long's he got?
Give him a minute on this one, because I really want him to go to town on it.
Dude, you got 60 seconds. Go.
The remake, right. I don't know. I spent 3 days being fucking angry. Again. I don't understand the point of it. It looks beautiful. Like, it's beautifully shot. Christopher Doyle does an amazing job, and the performances are fine. You know, there's nothing wrong with it as a production. I just don't understand the point of it. Like, what's the point of it? You know, there's got to be, you know, I'm sure smarter people than me have thought about it and have tried to you know, work out exactly what Gus Van Sant was thinking with a shot-by-shot remake, but far be it from me to be able to see into Mr. Van Sant's head, because I have no idea why you would spend $30 million shot-for-shot remaking it and bringing almost nothing new to it. Maybe that's my VCA degree. It just isn't paying off for me in this regard, because, you know, it's probably genuine, pure art that I just don't get my head around. But I don't understand. Fucking great poster, though. I'll give you that.
Wow. I wasn't expecting that.
No.
So next in line comes Bates Motel, the television series that ran from 2013 to 2017. That's 5 seasons. And this is a contemporary re-imaging of Psycho. It depicts Norman Bates and his mother's purchase of the Bates Motel, chronicles Norman's teenage years. I'm not gonna lie to you. I hate this show.
I hate it. I watched the pilot and I couldn't watch anymore. I didn't like the idea of
contemporary setting.
Yeah, it's contemporary setting, but it tries to pull in elements of the past, and it just doesn't work.
Yeah, people praise this show. Like people,
Yeah, there's
I
a
know
lot of people that
love
love
this
it.
show, and to me, that whole re-imaging and bringing it into a sort of modern setting just completely bastardizes the franchise.
Feels like a Baz Luhrmann sort of move, sort of modernizing something that maybe doesn't need to be modernized and made all flashy and feature funky music and Rihanna getting killed in a shower. I think she did the shower scene.
Yeah, because the final season kind of redid Psycho, so it led up to what we know. But yeah, look, it's I mean, the production value
People
is good.
really like it. My sister, my niece, even my dad liked it. And I don't understand why my dad liked it, but my dad likes The Big Bang Theory, so who knows what goes on in the Gunn family.
That's it. So, I mean, look, we're not going to touch upon this. I know there's people listening that will adore this show, but I just can't get into it. I tried twice, and first time I couldn't get past the pilot.
Yeah.
Then I thought, well, no, let's go further, and I got about 6 or 7 episodes
Brave
in.
brave man.
There are so many fucking tangents here that's just not relevant, and it's just dumb. Anyway, so... Moving on. So I want to talk in film terms. One more. Let's just quickly talk about Hitchcock, the film with Helen Mirren and Anthony Hopkins. Now, this is a fantastic film for people that don't like documentaries but want to know all about the production of the original Psycho. It's the backstory of the development. It's a fascinating historical context with this making of. Hitchcock, he was at the time the most prolific Hollywood filmmaker on the planet, and the studio didn't want him to make it. Like, he had absolute trouble getting this production going.
Yeah.
And so check out Hitchcock. It's just cool. This thing's falling apart. Okay, so before we wrap up this episode, I want to touch upon the novels. Now, I know you don't read.
I don't read.
all.
I'm illiterate.
And I haven't read these, and
Okay.
I really, really want to get my hands on these. If Sean was here, I'm not going to fucking call him again, but if Sean was here, he's probably read them all.
Undoubtedly. But possibly not seen Bates Motel, the movie.
Yeah, well, anyway, so the first, obviously, Psycho was made in 1959. Now, a couple of differences from the film is that Norman actually beheads Marion in the shower.
Oh, wow.
Her name's Mary in the book, but yeah, he cuts her head off, so that's a big difference, and obviously Hitchcock couldn't get away with that. And Norman actually hoards massive collections of pornography, books about the occult and Satanism.
Sounds like Mike Patton from Faith No More.
Yeah. So the interesting fact is that Norman Bates was into all that stuff, occultism, Satanism, and all that kind of thing. That's never, ever present in this film franchise. So a bit of a spoiler for anyone that does actually want to read the book. You can turn us down for 30 seconds. Mother's personality in the book actually eventually overtakes Norman completely, and in a twist upon a twist, Norman is revealed to be the murderous psychotic personality, and that Mother herself was the gentle soul that wouldn't hurt a fly. So that was not in Hitchcock's original ending.
No, but it's in fact in Gus Van Sant's version, because you have the police say that the Mother basically personality took over, the body completely. And then Mother's sitting there and she goes, I would never have done that. Well, Norma's sitting there, but Mother's talking. Shut up. And Mother says, not me, I wouldn't hurt a fly. And that was an interesting touch for the remake.
So Gus Van Sant can say, I was true to the book.
Well, he did a few weird things, like through to a few different things from the book. And then, So everyone always talks about that being a, shot-for-shot remake. He took a lot of liberties.
Okay, so the second book, Psycho 2, came in 1982. I mentioned it earlier. It follows Norman to Hollywood, where he plots the murder of the filmmakers that are making a movie on his life. Talked about that. Third one, interestingly, is called Psycho House. Now, this was written in 1999, also by Block. Oh. And a decade after the death of Norman Bates, an entrepreneur rebuilds the Bates Motel as a tourist attraction. A writer checks in to write a novel about Norman Bates, and murders begin to happen around him. And he enlists the help of experts to investigate. It was actually a really poorly received book. But
it feels like, did you write it because he wanted to do it? He's like, this time they'll do the sequel. This time they'll do the sequel. They just remade the film, so they'll make my sequel this time, but this version.
Well, it was a poorly received book. And that was actually the end of Psycho for him. But then, lo and behold, 2016, a guy called Chet Williamson. Yeah, Chet says it all,
It
doesn't
sounds like he's a folk musician.
He wrote a book called Psychosanitarium, which is included in the...
in the canon of psychonovellas or whatever.
Yeah, so it's the story, and it recounts Norman's 20 years inside the mental asylum. But then he introduces a twin brother, and which gives more thought, I guess, to the events depicted in the original.
Right.
Because, it wasn't Norman, wasn't the brother type of thing. But come on.
I don't know, yeah.
I have no intention of reading that one.
Who's reading that in 2015, 2016, honestly?
I know.
Yeah.
I know. So anyway, that pretty much brings us to the end of our Psycho franchise. That was exhausting.
Yeah, it was a decent effort, dude.
Pretty brutal. Anyway, so thanks for listening, everyone, and we'll catch you on the next one. I think Sean gets the next pick. That'll be interesting.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, that's probably going to be some obscure action trilogy from the mid-90s.
Well,
No, it'll be interesting.
Maybe if you say it 5 times, it'll come true. So anyway, we'll catch you next time. Ciao.
So you don't really feel that sociologists have much of a foundation for saying that films that record the criminal impulse or television shows that concentrate on crime have a lasting influence on the viewer?
I would say it had an influence on sick minds, but not on healthy minds. It reminds me of when I made Psycho. A man was arrested in Los Angeles for murdering 3 women. And he is alleged to have said that he murdered the 3rd woman after seeing Psycho. So I was called by the newspapers for a comment. And my only question was, what film did he see before he murdered the 2nd woman? And perhaps before he murdered the 1st woman, maybe he'd just drunk a glass of milk. You must have a basic sense of humor about it, because that's what you're doing. You're doing it deliberately to scare people. And after all, there's no difference between my making Psycho to scare people, with tongue-in-cheek, shall we say, than a mother who says boo to scare her 3-month-old baby. What's the difference?